you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Folks, Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, the earliest things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. For 16 years, 2,700 episodes, we've been bringing the Chris Voss Show because we care. We just care so much. We want to make the world a better place, want to lift and inspire the world, and we have these amazing authors on the show. Why wouldn't you want to share that with your friends, family, relatives, just people you meet on the street? Walk up to them and be like, hey, have you subscribed to the Chris Voss Show podcast yet? You should, because you'll probably be less dumb. No, don't say that to people. That'd be rude. There might be violence that ensues. Just be nice and just say, hey, you should check this out. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss one, the TikTok, all this crazy place on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book's success. Today, an amazing young lady on the show. She took 2 hours to go through her closet to find the best things to wear on the show, and I'm so proud of her. We're going to demand this from every guest. They must spend at least 2 to 4 hours going through their closet and finding the best clothes to wear, because these are the kind of people we have on, folks. High integrity. They don't dress like I don't want to shame homeless people, but they come dressed for the show. Let's put it that way. So she's here with us, and her new book that came out September 10th, 2024 is called All Shook Up, a novel by Enid Langbert. We're going to get into it with her, find out her journey and details and what's in her book. Enid was not as adventurous as her book's protagonist, Paula, in high school, but she made up for it in the 60s by marching, sitting in, and raging against segregation and the war, while in her spare time raising 3 children. Eventually, she went to law school. She loved zealously advocating for her clients as an attorney, whether they deserved it or not, until her husband became ill and she closed her practice to care for him. After he passed, she traveled widely and enrolled in English literature master's program. She is now writing her thesis, tracing the influence of James Joyce's legal issues on his writing of Finnegan's Wake, a topic about which she is unambiguously passionate. And she lives in New York City. Welcome to the show. How are you, Enid?
I'm great, Chris. Thank you. I told you about the dressing confidentially. I didn't think you were going to broadcast it to the world.
Well, I thought it was wonderful. So if you want,
I like people to think I just roll out of bed and look like
looking this amazing. Well, you just told them, so they're going to have to believe it. But no, we can edit that if you want. But if you want, I thought it was wonderful and cute. So. I think it's great. So give us any .coms. Where do you want people to find you on the interwebs?
I have a website, enidlangbert.com. It's very hard to remember. It's just my book. There's no punctuation. And that has that has a lot of great stuff about me. This is the book, and it's on Amazon, and there's a lot of really amazing reviews there, which I'm very grateful for. Mm-hmm. And it's been in various other magazines and stuff, but actually, if you look at my website, you'll see a lot of different remarks, comments, and reviews and things like that.
So this has got a big old, one of those old classic, what do they used to call these, LP players, song players, jukebox.
Jukebox.
Old jukebox. Yeah, I'm so old, it took me a while to remember the term jukebox, because you never hear or see them anymore.
Well, yeah, they were so beautiful.
Yeah, they really were. In fact, there's one there's like a Greasy Spoon that I go to. It has the old diners. In fact, one of the breakfasts is Breakfast in America.
Oh, yeah.
Like
So every once in a while, you see like a 50s diner themed restaurant, and they'll have a jukebox.
I miss those days. I remember plugging up the jukebox, playing all the
Wonderful.
songs that everyone else in the bar hated. So give us.
I have a long. That's funny. There's that scene out of my book where she plays rock and roll, and her mother, and Bill Haley, which is like the first rock and roll song she's heard, and she plays it on the jukebox, and everybody in the restaurant gets freaked out and angry, and her mother's humiliated, and she's just so happy.
That used to be me. I'm like, I'm going to play all the heavy music and all the foo pop music. People in the pool hall were always like, for reals, Metallica again. So anyway, so give us a 30,000 overview about this book. Tell us what's up with this as a general.
Well. Actually, the genesis of it is, I one morning I found myself the proud progenitor of a bunch of little grandchildren, and so I started writing books and making stories for them, And I said, well, this is fun. So I took a children's book writing course, right? And at a certain point, the instructor was describing how she had gotten her book published, and she said that her family came from Kentucky, and her aunt told her that during the Depression, for a year and a half, they had nothing to eat but pumpkins. And that had inspired a book this picture book about pumpkins. And I had like this moment of enlightenment, and it was like the ceiling opened. I said, that's it? From that, you got a book? My life was 1,000 times more interesting than that, I mean, I lived in New York City. It was the beginning of television, the beginning of rock and roll. Elvis Presley. My father was a Holocaust survivor. His whole family was killed. Cold War. I mean, this all came flooding to me. And it was interesting because the minute before that, if you had asked me, what was your adolescence like? I would have said, yuck. The pits. It was awful. I was miserable. I was depressed. I was unhappy. Nothing happened. And then I wound up spending, all this time thinking and really getting into this part of my life that I had always thought was the worst, And it's not like it was not worst. I mean, there was that in it too. It's not Grease. I always hated Grease because it made it seem like the period was all like
the movie.
It wasn't, yeah.
Okay.
But it was a difficult time. But that's what the book is about, and it's about Paula, who's 14 in 1956. And if you do the math, that is how old I was. And she lives in Queens, which I did. But as I say, other than that, she actually winds up with something I always wanted and certainly never had, which was a cool friend. She actually gets friendly with one of the cool girls. The word nerd didn't exist. If the word nerd existed in the 50s, that's what I was, right? I still am probably, but I was an honor student, and I would look at the cool girls, with their makeup and jewelry and so she actually does wind up with a cool friend because they connect over Catcher in the Rye.
Oh.
Because Catcher in the Rye is like her first friend. Paula's first friend is Holden Caulfield. He's the first person that she finds, even that feels as she does, so restless, so unhappy, so looking for something and not knowing what it is, And because that's what really I think that period was like in the 50s. It's this very quiet period where people are trying to pretend, the grown-ups, are trying to pretend that the Depression and the war and all these terrible things are over. And now they just have this wonderfully peaceful life with their little split-level houses and canned food. And she's so restless. And I mean, looking for something that, these are the things that sort of in the 60s, these come out. This is what she's looking for, she finds in the 60s. But this is before that, when there's no definition, there's nothing, it's just this feeling of restlessness. And so first she finds it in Catcher in the Rye, and then in the rock and roll, which is like so amazing, right? It's the beginning of everything. And then she meets her cool friend and has adventures that I couldn't have dreamed of actually having for real.
Now, I've noticed that there might be some Elvis in this thing. We've got a picture of you in the video right now, if you're watching on YouTube, folks, of Elvis and a small little guitar. Do you collect Elvis stuff? What's the...
Well, yeah, I think that's about it. But no, Elvis was, like they discover Elvis, and he's the voice of the future. I mean, he's the voice of hope. He's like everything. They're just crazy, wild in love with him,
Was that what it was like for you when you first heard Elvis?
Absolutely. No.
Yeah.
Those things that I described, like the first minute that I heard rock and roll, or the first moment that I heard Elvis, or the first cigarette that made me so sick,
Yeah, I remember trying cigarettes when I was in junior high. Man, I was coughed so hard. I was like, fuck, screw this. But no, Elvis was huge, man. I grew up in the 70s. I remember driving in the big, giant Impala, those boat cars. Had no seatbelts, but they had, 5 miles of bench seats in them. You could basically sleep inside the bench seats. They were that long as a tall person. I mean, you would... but your girlfriend could always saddle up to you. Otherwise, you'd be like, hey, down there. You'd have to have an intercom system to talk to your girlfriend at the other end of the car. But you can tell what prom date I went on in what car. But those were the days. And I remember hearing over the radio that Elvis had passed. And
yeah, I remember that. That of course is 20 years later. But
yeah. And but yeah, he was so popular. I mean,
well, he was the first. I mean, when you I was John Lennon. One of the Beatles said that that before nobody did anything, and Elvis did all of it. He was the first one that did all of it. Yeah. I mean, people didn't like his hair comb, his sideburns, his lavender shirts, his swiggling, everything. Gyrate, Elvis the pelvis, gyrating.
Yeah, I was just going to use the word gyrating. That's
I mean, he started all of it, and we were just like, oh, it was so wonderful, it was like such a breath of fresh air.
A lot of, let me ask you this, a lot of things they say about that time was in the 50s and stuff. It was that time of what they kind of hearken as the IBM man. So at IBM, you always had to wear a black and white suit to IBM to work. And, black hat, those hats all the men used to wear back then. And everyone had to dress the same. There was no color, really. There was no celebration of color.
Well, that's absolutely. They talked about conformity, the word, and they did. I remember my father going to work in the morning, all the men going to work in their raincoats and their hats and their ties. And that's why somebody in a lavender shirt was shocking. It's very hard. I mean, one of the reasons that I wrote the book was, so my grandchildren could see what life was like then, because it's hard. All of these things are so hard to imagine. Yeah. I mean, imagine people getting upset because a boy has longish hair.
Oh, yeah. I got in trouble for that one. I got
upset if somebody's wearing a lavender shirt, I mean, and there was no method. I think one of the things that's hard to imagine is there wasn't any way of finding out information except the written word.
Yeah.
There was television, had these little tiny screens, and they had like 8 stations that went off and played the Star Spangled Banner. And So, I mean, there wasn't, when you think about Google and you think about, having this little thing in your pocket that can access all the knowledge of the universe, it's hard to imagine that we had no access to things that weren't all around us. And our world was so limited, I mean, teenagers all over the world now listen to the same music, have the same clothes. But when I was in school, when somebody transferred in from Brooklyn, they were strange, I mean, they didn't dress the same. They hadn't, I mean, everything was very, very, so much more smaller. Mm-hmm. The world was so much smaller.
Yeah. Well, there was less people in it too, and less craziness and yada, yada, yada and stuff. But,
well, there's plenty of craziness. I mean,
yeah.
I didn't learn about, I mean, my father's whole family had been killed, and that's one of the themes of the book. I mean, I found out hundreds of years later that I'm what they call the second generation.
Oh, wow.
But I didn't know that. That's another thing I think that's so hard to imagine, because the Holocaust is everywhere: movies, books, right? The word Holocaust hadn't even been applied yet. Mm-hmm. No, it hadn't even been framed yet. And people like my father, who came over in 1936 and brought his sister over, and then tried to bring his parents over unsuccessfully. So everyone else in his family was killed. And they didn't even know exactly where or how. They just knew that that's what happened.
Wow.
And my father never talked about it. So it was a period that people called now, in retrospect, this conspiracy of silence.
Yeah.
And the most important thing really in your life is the thing that nobody talks about.
Yeah. So, a lot of Holocaust survivors were like that. We've had people on who've written books and documented, the Jewish settlement of Israel and stuff after the war, and how it seems like a lot of Jewish people, the horrors were so extensive. They just wanted to get back to normal lives, and they wanted to forget about, what they'd been through, and not really forget so much, but they just wanted to get back to normal.
Well, there was no vocabulary for it, and there was no room for it. There was no sympathy. There was no understanding of it.
Yeah.
And, I mean, people hadn't talked about it. It was really, as I say, they didn't even frame the word Holocaust until the 60s, So there was really no place to discuss it. That was one of the things that was so interesting later on, to discover that my father was not unique, and my childhood was not unique. And I wasn't so unique in that way, that there was a whole generation of us who had experienced this the same way. And that's another factor in the book.
Yeah. And there's actually a bit of trauma to that's passed down to the first generation.
Totally.
So I think we've had people on that have talked about Jewish trauma. I think we had a coach on who focuses on helping people understand it. And it's unfortunate, the horrors that took place, and hopefully we never do that again. Of course, the Uyghurs right now in China are kind of experiencing.
Well, it never stopped. I mean, that was a specific thing, but I mean, that sort of thing has never stopped. It's always going on somewhere.
Yeah. So now, is Elvis incorporated a lot in this book? Is that a feature?
Well, her feelings about Elvis.
Oh, okay.
I mean, she talks a lot about it, and when he's on the Milton Berle show.
Oh, yeah.
And watching that, and the role of rock and roll and Elvis, I guess, Holden Caulfield, Elvis Presley, and Bill Haley. These are her mentors. These are her salvation.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as I say, she actually makes friends with this cool girl, and who secretly is actually intelligent. It was sort of embarrassing to be bright. I remember I really hated being smart.
You hated being smart.
I would much rather have been sexy. But anyway, so this girl, hides it, but she has Catcher in the Rye in her pocket, and that's how they connect.
Wow.
And so then they blend, even though their living situation is different, but they're sort of from different backgrounds and different class situation, but they share this restlessness and this longing, and looking for something, and that's what they share and connect with.
So what made you want to write the story? Was there a time where you just had an epiphany and you're like,
well, I had the epiphany. I realized I wanted to tell my grandchildren what it had been like for me when I was their age, and how different my life had been when I was their age. They, of course, are now way past that age. but the contrast between, children in the 21st century with iPhones and television. Of course, I mean, I didn't see a television set till I was 8 years old.
Oh, really?
It was this little thing.
Yeah.
One woman, one girl's family got it. We all went over to see it. This little.
That's been quite a thing.
It was, but it was underwhelming, really. I mean, when you think about television, it was this little thing. It was fuzzy, it was funny, so it was just kind of an oddity,
Yeah.
I mean, there was nothing to indicate that it would become television,
Oh, wow.
It was, and then, then after a while, like then Elvis was on Milton Berle, then Milton Berle and Ed Sullivan and some of these shows started. So you really could see on these shows things that you would want to see, which is unusual for when you were a kid, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, before that, you just had radio, right?
Well, there was radio, and I listened to radio all the time, and Alan Freed. That was Alan Freed and Murray the K, the DJs started to play rock and roll, and that was on that was the first time I heard Bill Haley rock around the clock, and Shake, Rattle, and Roll. That was the first one I ever heard, and I talk about that. It's just like, oh my God, it's like amazing. It's not crooners. It's not,
So in the book, you write about several different things. One thing that you kind of talk about, and this is being fed to me by the PR questionnaire that they gave us, you talk about the word Holocaust. When was the word Holocaust applied to the German genocide? I'm not sure what that's about, but sure you know.
Well, my book takes place in 1956, and I think it was like 61 or 2 or something that there was it was either a movie or TV show. I'm forgetting what it was exactly, but it was not until several years later. It didn't exist. At the period of time that I'm talking about, there was no word for what had happened, and there was no real sense. I remember I kind of always knew that my grandparents had died in Germany, but I didn't know, did it only happen to them? I mean, it wasn't clear, it wasn't talked about. And there was such all of the grown-ups in school and at home, there was such an intent to focus on how wonderful everything was now, how safe everything was now. And of course, safety means similarity, conformity.
Yeah.
And she hated that. I hated it.
Huh. Yeah.
Always. I always hated it. I didn't want it. I mean, I didn't run out in the street to get hit by a car, but I couldn't stand that sense of safety and conformity. And that's what the book is about, a search, a search for something else.
Well, you certainly found it in the 60s. You guys found color and acid and drugs and rock and roll.
I did.
But that kind of explains, your explanation of the conformity and the times of it. I mean, I guess that was kind of a worldwide response for everybody in conformity because everyone just wanted to get back to normal. That's one of the things.
My parents, I mean, in retrospect, obviously, they're long gone, but and I didn't feel this at the time, but they were really victims of history. My mother grew up in New York and my father grew up in Germany, but they were similar in that they had started out with a lot of promise, very comfortable situations, a lot of promise, and both of them had that taken away from them. My mother lost it by the Depression, where her father lost his factory and they poor, and she had to work selling china in Macy's to support the family. My father, of course, his whole world was taken away, and he came to New York without anything, with people helping him.
Wow.
So they were victims of history. So suddenly, now we have the 50s and they have jobs and they have, canned food and, they just have
microwaves.
They have the ability, they have a nice place to live and they have clothes and, so they really cherish it in a way that you can't if you haven't lived through it. As much as my mother always said, when I was your age, it was the Depression. But, which,
that was the other thing. Yeah, they lived through the Depression. So that's another reason they may have had conformity, just for safety and
they
trying to make everything work.
They valued plenty. You could go to the grocery store and there was plenty of food there. All during the war, right? You had to have slips, and there was nothing in the store. They had lived through very difficult times, and now they were having a wonderful time, which was fine, except it didn't. And a lot of people, I think, were very happy. I wasn't.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And there were those of us who were just longing for something else, which didn't happen until the 60s, and then we just dropped out and had a ball. But it didn't happen then. But so that's what that story is about. It's about the striving. It's about the seeking.
Yeah, the seeking of all the good stuff there. Well, it sounds like a wonderful, lovely book and wonderful stuff that people can enjoy with it. What's the future bring for you? Is there maybe a continuum of this series, maybe turn into a series in the characters?
Well, I know I have thought a lot about, I mean, I did have a lot more adventures, obviously, after this. So there's, like I had children and I went to live in a community and, and then I went to law school. So I've had a lot. So I have thought about it. Right now, as I say, I realized at a certain point that I could do whatever I wanted, and what I wanted to do was study English. I mean, I really am a nerd, and as I have been reminded. So I'm working on my thesis, so that's what I'm writing. But I could write another book about Paula. I know her very well, and I like her. She's very funny. I guess that's something we should really mention because the book is very funny.
Ah.
People say that she's very funny because I'm funny.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. We write what we know. So when we look at stuff, we go, hey, this is, we write from our own frame and everything else. So yeah, a future series might be good. People love hearing about the books and all that sort of good stuff. They love the characters as they progress through books and series. So, what do you think Paula, your character in the book, would think of rap these days?
Oh, she'd hate it.
Evidently they called it bubblegum rock back then.
In retrospect, they did.
Oh,
obviously, and once the Beatles came out, this is 1956. So like in 1961 or 2 or something. No, it was like 63 when the Beatles came to America. But it was before that. All right, in like 60, we started folk rock and Bob Dylan.
Oh, yeah.
So we kind of turned our back on rock and roll
Simon and Garfunkel.
Completely. And it was Dylan and Phil Oakes and Simon and Garfunkel. And so it was a different kind of music, and it was a different kind of goal. You weren't just talking about, losing your girlfriend. You're talking about, war and equality and stuff. So we sort of, at that point, turned our back on it. And then, of course, when the Beatles came, you sort of went back to rock and roll, but it was a different kind of rock and roll.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting kind. And it's just so amazing, the talent, skill, and vision that they had. And
so I'd say that, music, it's like I've had this background music throughout my life, right? I can always tell what my life is like by thinking about the music that I was listening to. But I don't listen to rap.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. I like the soul of music. But, I get people that, everyone's got their flavors.
The last person I liked really was Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah, he's still great, right?
He's still great.
Still great. He's still running around. He's like 75.
Nobody gives concerts like he does. I mean, it's unbelievable. He goes on and on. It's fabulous.
How old is Bruce now? Bruce Springsteen. I just saw him on stage in Minnesota, and he is 76, and he's still out there playing on stage.
Yeah, he has such energy, and of course, when you know all his music like I do, it's fun.
Yeah, what a great stuff. Yeah, he was just in Minneapolis supporting them there. So what do you hope people come away with when they read your book?
I hope that they just feel. One woman said, "I felt like I had my best friend on every page," and I thought that was lovely. I mean, I would like them to, on a larger sense. Obviously, you could see what the turning point of the 20th century was, and moving from the horrors of the first half of the 20th century to what later happens. And this is like the paradigm, the pivotal point, Mm-hmm. And but I think the book is fun. I think the book really gives you a little bit of an insight of what life is like before the internet, before the phones, when telephones sat on the table and phonographs sat on the table and had big holes, played records with big holes in them.
Oh, yeah.
And, and you could only see movies when they were playing at the local theater where there were women in white dresses telling you to be quiet. And, it was a different world. It was a different world. And it sort of gives you an insight into this world and what's happened in this world.
Yeah. Well, so let us hear. But, it was, I come to think of it, between the Depression, the wars, 2 world wars, and everything else, people were just really happy to get back to normal. And it was kind of an interesting life, this burgeoning of color and light that came out of it. I remember, Elvis was arrested a few times, I think, wasn't he, for his gyrating.
Well, they started to show on television. They started to just show him from like here up. Is
that what they did? Really? Wow.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that when he was first on, they would show him singing, but then they would just show him from here up. Yeah.
He's gyrating those hips.
Yeah.
It's a maximum porn, and now they got OnlyFans, so there's that. Well, it's been fun to have you on and catch up on the show. Give us your .coms as we go out to Enid, so people can find you on the interwebs.
Yeah, well, it's Enid Langbert, ENIDLANGBERT.com.
Thank you very much, Enid, for being on the show. It's been wonderful to have you, and just a delight.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thanks, Artists, for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss and all those crazy places on the internet. Refer to show your family, friends, relatives. Order her book wherever fine books are sold. It is called All Shook Up, a novel out September 10th, 2024 by Enid Langbert. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.
All right, there, Enid.